Tonight on CBC Vancouver News. With water levels rising, much of the south coast now bracing for floods. Also,
so that's when I was sure that, okay, he's on the bus and he's going to make it.
I am very hurt from last 2 days.
Family and friends of those lost in the Christmas Eve bus crash share their stories and their grief.
The people outside start to shouting us that get out of the building, get out.
And dozens of people displaced after a devastating fire in North Vancouver.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. Anita is away tonight. I'm Michelle Ghoussoub. Parts of southwestern BC are under a flood watch following last week's snowfall and this week's high tides. The region has also seen up to 100 millimeters of rain since Sunday, with more falling today. And Environment Canada says these combined factors could cause damaging flooding in low-lying areas. Parts of the Stanley Park seawall were closed due to the path flooding this morning, and river levels are rising and may exceed their banks. As Lindsay Duncombe reports, a flood watch remains in place for much of this province.
Another day, another weather crisis in British Columbia.
When I first heard the forecast, I thought, oh, here we go again.
First the snow, the rain, and the freezing rain. Now today, the risk of flooding, specifically, especially high tides known as king tides.
We haven't really had this type of weather for years. About 30 years ago, it was probably this bad. But it's definitely manageable if you get ahead of it. It's just not if you don't.
For this waterfront community in Delta, BC, that means sandbagging properties and helping each other.
No, they've helped me put sandbags down. I couldn't even lift one myself. I'm not a spring chicken, so.
So we're all working together. We have a full staff out there now. We've been providing sandbagging and doing sandbagging in certain areas.
The big concern with these king tides is the wind. The worry is that that wind will whip up the ocean waves, and then those waves will carry the debris, all of those logs and rocks, and put them directly in the path of the houses.
In Vancouver, similar fears. The Stanley Park seawall too dangerous to navigate. It's hard to tell where this beachside pool ends and the sea begins.
The water level is the highest we believe we've seen in over 30 years, probably 40 years. So it is a bit unnerving.
On Vancouver Island, all that water made getting around a challenge. And in Washington State,
that is a jellyfish heading down 4th.
It's so wet, these folks found a jellyfish in a puddle. This is likely the worst of it.
But we still continue to see high king tides through the early part of this week. But really the highest of those water levels was earlier today.
Relief in a place where weather crises feel increasingly commonplace. Lindsay Duncombe, CBC News, Vancouver.
As you heard there, Vancouver Island also seeing some high water levels. Some residents in the North Cowichan area are now under evacuation alert.
It's not as bad as it was last year, and hopefully it doesn't get that bad. Hopefully we stay dry on the inside.
The alert is affecting more than 24 homes on Chemainus, Amos, Crofton, and Swallowfield roads. The roads have since reopened to drivers, but the alert remains in place as melting snow and storm surges could lead to higher water levels. Last year, the region also experienced heavy rains, but the province says they're on the lookout.
The cumulative impact of that heavy rain, we've seen between 70 and 350 millimeters of rain since about Friday, as well as quite a significant amount of snow melt. And so that really is adding to saturated soils and will continue to be a hazard as we go through, particularly this afternoon and into tomorrow.
A king tide along the Georgia Strait has reached its peak, but more is expected later this week. No injuries or damage has been reported so far. And Kuljeet Kaila joins us now for a look at the conditions ahead. Kuljeet, we've gone from freezing to floods, at least here on the south coast. Huge amounts of water on the roads, on the seawall. I know we both had an incredibly damp walk into the office today. So is this rain going to stick around?
It's going to stick around. And today I realized something very important. I do not have waterproof gear. I came into work soaked from head to toe, jeans, backpack, jacket. So now I've been shopping for waterproof clothing, like an actual wardrobe. So that might come out at the end of the week, because that's when we're going to get our next significant amount of rainfall. We do have some warnings in place today. A winter storm warning continues for areas around Quesnel and Revelstoke, and also for parts of the West Kootenay region. We've got this wind warning coming off the coast as well. So it's making the perfect recipe for high tides, and still pretty cold in parts of BC. We've got this winter storm warning for Fort St. John, Smithers, and Port Hardy, sitting at -15 for Fort St. John, -2 at Smithers. Not too bad for Port Hardy, but quite cold conditions and winter weather there. For the province, over the next few days, we're going to hit 0 degrees in Lytton. Temperatures are going to do another drop again. By about Thursday, things get cold, and then we head into another swoop of rain. How much rain are we getting for the week ahead? Here's a bit of a breakdown. Wednesday, tomorrow, we might get a bit of a break, but we do have a 40% chance of rain. And of course, today got 30 millimeters. Today, we're getting even more. And then it continues for Thursday and Friday. I'll have your 7-day forecast coming up next. Michelle?
All right, thanks, Kuljeet. And certainly a good week to invest in that rain gear.
Yeah, I'll be wearing that on Friday.
And the weather conditions are also impacting BC ferry sailings. One sailing from Tsawwassen to Shorts Bay was cancelled this morning, as was a return sailing on the same route. Many others were delayed due to high tides, creating unsafe conditions, mechanical issues, and congestion at the berths. BC Ferries is advising passengers to arrive well ahead of their departure and to check the BC Ferries website for updates. Canadian Blood Services says it's in need of blood and plasma after this week's blast of winter took a bite out of expected donations. The organization says severe wind, snowfall, and icy conditions in much of the country have meant about 1,500 donations didn't take place. It says there's a critical need for platelets for patients undergoing cancer treatments and O-negative blood for newborns and emergencies. Well, friends and family members of those who died in a Christmas Eve bus crash are sharing their stories tonight. The province today also addressed the road conditions that night and the efforts to keep the highway clear. As Benit Brach reports, families who have lost loved ones are left with few answers.
Galwinder Singh looked forward to celebrating the holidays with his cousin, but he's been left heartbroken.
I am very hurt from last 2 days.
Their celebrations cut short by a fatal bus crash on Christmas Eve on Highway 97C, claiming the life of his cousin Karnjot Singh Sodhi and 3 others.
He is a very nice guy, very nice and polite, and always very hard worker.
Sodhi arrived in Canada just 4 months ago with dreams to build a life for himself and his 2 children and wife back home in Amritsar, India.
He struggled in Australia too much. That's why he come here for nice future.
His co-worker drove him to the bus station on Christmas Eve, and they enjoyed an Indian meal together.
It was all, laughs and smiles. Everything was going great. I hugged him. We said goodbye.
Karnjot checked in from the Okanagan connector.
That's when I was sure that, okay, he's on the bus and he's going to make it.
But that phone call would be their last. These 2 brothers now cherish their moments and memories with the colleague who became a friend.
All the struggles he's been through, he never let that get in the way of his character, in the way of his, daily life. He always had a cheerful smile.
Police believe 46 people were on the bus, which was operated by the company E-Bus. Interior Health says 6 remain in hospitals with non-life-threatening injuries.
But we can only imagine what it must feel like to be a family member of one of those who tragically passed away on our highways on the eve and height of the holiday season.
As a truck driver, Karnjot's cousin says he's often concerned about road conditions on BC's highways in the winter. The province says that night crews were out in full force clearing the highways.
Their maintenance contractors were out all day on Saturday with 7 pieces of equipment along the connector, plowing, sanding, and salting the highway. The winter conditions on Highway 97C on Saturday were not unusual for late December.
The investigation into the crash is ongoing. Meanwhile, victims' families, like Kulwinder, left waiting for answers. Benit Brach, CBC News, Vancouver.
A fire in a residential building has displaced more than 70 people in North Vancouver. Early Tuesday morning, the District of North Vancouver Fire Service responded to a structural fire near Capilano Road and Marine Drive. Residents woke up to the sound of fire alarm and a heavy smell of smoke.
The fire alarm system went on, and then I smelled smoke, very, very bad. So me and my parents, we went out. And we couldn't take anything with us because we didn't know if it's gonna be that much, long time.
The displaced residents were directed to a warming center at Lionsgate Community Center. At least 2 people have been taken to hospital with injuries. A total of 26 units have been assessed as inhabitable as a result of the fire. North Vancouver Fire and Rescue Services says the fire is not being investigated as suspicious. The travel woes continue for many BC passengers struggling to get home from Mexico. They've been stranded since Sunwing Airlines began canceling flights last week because of weather conditions.
I just checked with the front desk to say we were booked here 3 nights. What are we supposed to do? And they said, we just got an email from Sunwing that you're here for 1 more night.
But we haven't received any communication from Sunwing.
This family was supposed to return to their Qualicum Beach home on the 23rd, but have been stuck in Puerto Vallarta for days, missing Christmas with their family. And they are not alone.
You're in a really beautiful, wonderful place, but you're sitting here, spending your entire day calling airlines that don't respond to you, which is just, so frustrating and anxiety provoking. So I think all of us are just super anxious to kind of, when will we get back? Is it going to be in a day? Is it going to be in a week? Is it going to be in 2 weeks? We have no idea at this point.
Sunwing has booked hotels for many delayed passengers, but David says the miscommunication has made things difficult, especially with his family of young children and seniors. What is a disease detective and how are they tracking what variants should be on our radar in 2023? That story coming up after the break. Stay with us. Thanks for watching our commercial-free live stream. In Ontario, a group of tenants were shocked when they received a notice that their expected monthly payments for next year would jump up by 25%. A move they found was perfectly legal despite the province limiting 2023 rent increases at 2.5%.
It's a very good community. People are very friendly and very kind, and they care about each other.
But you're not staying here for much longer. Why is that?
Because the rent went up. I was paying $1,300, and December 1st, had I been staying, it would have been $1,400. I was really shocked. I don't know if I called my daughters. I often do that, but I think I didn't call them right away because, especially my oldest daughter, Jamie, she would have been very upset. We talked to a woman who was going to help us, but she was under the understanding they couldn't raise the rent that much. Ultimately, after reading the landlord-tenant, I kept saying, they can. And finally I called and they said, yeah, they can. And so there's nothing you can do. I think it's greed. I think it's usury. I think it's extortion. We all grew up with rent control. It would never occur to us that it didn't exist.
I was in an apartment in Ottawa. It was really nice, big 2-bedroom. I was only paying $1,100, but it was cockroaches, bed bugs. So my daughter found this for me. It was supposed to be $997, so I moved in. The $997 went up to $1,167 with locker by the time I moved in, which was doable, but still tight. I'm on disability. Maybe about 3 months ago, we got a letter saying the building had been sold, and then a week later, I think maybe we got a letter from the new owners saying they were increasing our rents. So they now want from me $1,400. I wanted to throw up. I cried for a week. I got frozen trying to think of how I move forward. What do I do? Where do I go? Yeah, it wasn't a good time. I've been looking. I have had my name on a waiting list for places in Metcalfe and Osgood for over 3 years. So I called them right away. I've moved up from 40th on the waiting list to 30. And now I'll try and put my name on other housings that are not brand new buildings that the rent will kind of just go up, cost of living. I do have a car, but I haven't been driving it. You know, try to save on gas. Yeah, just looking where I can save to come up with the extra $300 a month.
An Ontario police officer was fatally shot this afternoon. The shooting took place in Haldimand County outside Hamilton when Constable Kuljeet Kaila responded to a call about a stuck vehicle.
I understand he was a young officer and he was one of ours, and this will have a deep impact in our community.
A man and a woman were witnessed leaving the scene, and a shelter-in-place alert is active for residents in 6 nations of the Grand and surrounding areas. The suspect is named Randall McKenzie and is described as a 25-year-old Indigenous male, roughly 6 feet and 1 inch tall, with black hair. It's been a holiday season of frustration and delays for Canadian travelers, and it's not over yet. Hundreds of airline passengers are still stranded because of cancelled and delayed flights brought on by a powerful winter storm over Christmas weekend. Ethel Musa has the latest on the situation from Toronto.
It's become a common scene in airports across the country. Delayed flights, frayed nerves, and mounds of unclaimed baggage. Hundreds of Canadian travelers are also not where they're supposed to be.
Every day has been a real struggle. They know there's no plane coming.
Corinne Fiddler and her family were supposed to return from the Dominican Republic 6 days ago. That hasn't happened, and it's creating serious problems.
My grandbaby, her formula, running out of formula, diapers, all those things that you have to replace, picking up medications and, things that you can't just go buy off the shelf.
Fiddler's airline Sunwing says it's completed 2 recovery flights so far this week, and they have another 8 planned. But the airline admits some travelers won't be departing until Friday. The airline is just one of many struggling to make up for delayed and canceled flights during one of the busiest travel times of the year.
Airlines are clearly 100% responsible for getting their travelers to where they need to go. I think airlines need to have a real look now in terms of the meteorological implications of what's really a changing climate. So to the extent that airlines need to do things like have more spare aircraft and crew available.
And while there are regulations in place protecting Canadian passengers, one consumer advocate says they could go further to safeguard travelers.
Unfortunately, the Canadian rules aren't as complete as the European ones. If you're stranded in an airport because of weather, under the European rules, you have to have shelter and food provided and transportation if there is any needed to and from the airport.
Transport Canada says it understands how frustrating delays and cancellations are for travelers this holiday season. The federal department said airports and airlines are doing everything they can to ensure passengers are accommodated, and they are monitoring the situation. Ethel Musa, CBC News, Toronto.
As rough as Canada's travel situation has been, it's as bad or worse in parts of the U.S.
We're trying to fly home, but that's not looking like it's happening.
Southwest Airlines, one of America's biggest carriers, dropped over half its flights today, even before the day started. Southwest alone has now canceled over 12,000 flights since Friday. Meanwhile, Buffalo's airport is still closed as that city digs out. At least 28 people have died in the Buffalo region as a result of the storm. The death toll across the U.S. has now passed 60. Staying in the U.S., border officials can't keep up with the sheer number of migrants seeking entry. And as JP Tasker reports, almost 2 years after Donald Trump left office, a controversial part of the former president's administration's border policy is being extended.
The U.S. is grappling with the surge of migrants, streaming over the southern border at a pace not seen in modern history. New data reveals more than 1.6 million asylum applications are now pending in court.
Oh, this is a record. This is just by far a record total for the U.S.
This Venezuelan woman and her children sought refuge in November, but they were sent back to Mexico. They told us it was because of Title 42, she says. That's a Trump-era policy that allows officials to turn away asylum seekers on public health grounds, meant as a COVID containment emergency measure, and now extended. The Supreme Court is allowing it to stand while legal arguments play out, a decision that frustrates opponents.
It's literally like sending to walk the plank. They're going right into the hands of cartels.
Cara Squell and her family wanted to avoid that fate. They made a run for the border. I wanted to cross legally, but I felt I had no choice, she says. They're now in El Paso, the Texas border town that is ground zero for this wave. 2,500 people are arriving every day. Today, the state finished a 3-kilometer fence to curb the flow. With a crush of people, local agencies are overwhelmed.
We're dealing with human beings in a crisis situation, and I think it's a matter of what's a priority. What is a priority right now?
A priority that some Republican governors have politicized, like Texas Governor Greg Abbott, who again sent migrants north, this time to Vice President Kamala Harris's home in Washington. A provocative move the White House has called a cruel, dangerous, and shameful stunt. The Supreme Court's decision on Title 42 means migrants are left in limbo for now. An estimated 50,000 of them are along the border waiting to cross, a humanitarian crisis that experts say will only get worse. JP Tasker, CBC News, Washington.
A loose-knit group of scientists from SFU and elsewhere have been tracking the COVID-19 virus and its variants for almost 3 years. Last year, they spotted the Omicron strain. Christine Birak spoke with these disease detectives to find out what's on their radar for 2023.
With restrictions relaxed in China, COVID-19 is spreading like wildfire, raising concerns a volatile new variant could emerge. Just as the World Health Organization warns, variant surveillance is dwindling.
Are we ready to take the hit of another wave of a new variant that might emerge? I don't think so.
If you look at all of these, they all have those mutations.
At Simon Fraser University, Fiona Brinkman and her team are tracking a soup of variants spreading in Canada.
You're taking this data and then trying to be a detective and figure out, what's happening and what might be happening in the future.
The data comes from ongoing COVID-19 testing. It provides genetic sequences or fingerprints from the virus. Those sequences kind of look like barcodes that change as the virus mutates. Most mutations are slight and harmless, but at this time last year, scientists spotted a sequence with a shocking number of mutations. Omicron set off an explosion of cases that continues to burden the healthcare system.
One of the important components about this work is to really catch those new variants that are really significant as soon as possible.
Catching a new variant early can guide public health decisions, hospital staffing, and vaccine campaigns, but it requires sifting through millions of samples.
These variants are carrying more mutations than we'd expect.
At Western University, Art Poon is working with data scientists at home and abroad, building programs to track specific mutations in the virus.
We now have a sort of a short list of mutations that we're particularly concerned about.
Mainly 3 parts of the virus that affect how easily it spreads, whether it causes more severe illness, and how well it skirts our immune defenses.
I don't want to say it, but it's probably likely that we'll see something like another variant of concern again.
Scientists say the best defense against any current or new virus variants is a fresh dose of a COVID-19 vaccine, something millions of people in China are now lining up for. Christine Burak, CBC News, Toronto.
After the break, when humans are away, animals come out to play. The secret lives of Vancouver Island wildlife captured on camera. Stay with us.
Ten finalists showed up today for the Selleck Lookalike Contest. It was a promotional event organized by Zephyr Lincoln Mercury. The firm supplied a half-dozen cars for the Selleck movie Runaway, which was filmed recently in Vancouver and is now currently showing here. Originally, there were 30 entrants in the lookalike contest, but the field was narrowed down to 10. Today, they were judged on their facial features, their hair, and of course, their mustaches. The entrants were all pretty ordinary types. Most of them entered the contest just for the heck of it.
First prize is
the winner was number 10. He's 30-year-old Steve Rapard of Vancouver, who works as a construction cost estimator. He gets 6 months free use of a brand new car similar to the one used in the movie. Later, we asked him how he got interested in the contest.
My secretary told me about it, and she just gave me a hat and said, Steve, wear this hat and go down to Lincoln Mercury and try your luck.
Did you know before that tall Steve, that you did in fact look like Tom Selleck? Do people come up and...
Quite a few people come up and say, Tom, yeah. Is your name Tom and stuff? And yeah, it happens quite a bit.
Yeah, pretty exciting stuff, I guess.
Yeah, it's not bad.
For any young women out there who might be interested, forget it. This Selleck lookalike is happily married and has a child. Terry Dolan, CBC News, Vancouver.
Select concerts, sports, or plays. Please select your seats. Transaction complete. Your tickets are being printed.
Thank you for using the ATR PM.
You've seen the automated teller machines. Meet the automated ticket machine.
These are the seats you selected.
What the bank machines did for teller lineups, this should do for box office lineups. Using your credit card and your fingers, you will be able to access and pay for tickets to most entertainment and sporting events in the city. It may not eliminate lines like the ones we saw for the recent Stones concert, but for normal shows it will add convenience for the purchaser and lessen the load for the humans in the box office.
I don't know that this machine would really supplant entirely the current system of distributing tickets. It would perhaps augment it. And there are still some issues that face us, and one is the mass rush when tickets for such kinds of concerts become available.
Once all the bugs are ironed out, the automated ticket machine could be in your local mall within a year.
Kuljeet Kaila joins us once again. Kuljeet, it's that weird time of year between Christmas and New Year's where we're all kind of in limbo. So what can we expect for the end of this year and then the start of 2023?
Yes, well, confusion on my part because I keep forgetting what day it is, but weather-wise, we are going to get some more rain towards the end of the week. I'll get to that in just a moment. Taking a look at temperatures outside right now, 7 degrees and holding steady at the airport, West Vancouver and in Abbotsford, so quite balmy outside. Tomorrow's forecast across the province, we're going to see a mix of snow and rain in Prince George and -4, -10 up in Dease Lake and snow there as well, and a mix of sun and cloud for Prince Rupert. For Williams Lake, Kelowna is going to get a wet one tomorrow at 3 degrees, and some snow for Cranbrook tomorrow at 2 degrees. So quite cold there still. Here's what's going on in Vancouver. Today's high sat at 9, just above average. Our records from the 80s and 90s for our high and low. Rain by Wednesday morning. This is what we're expecting. 60 to 80 millimeters for most of the lower mainland, and about 120 millimeters for higher elevations like Squamish. It will be a dry weekend, and yes, New Year's Eve should be a dry one if things hold as they're supposed to right now. This is what the 7-day looks like. Rain coming back for Thursday and Friday. We're going to get quite a bit. 40% chance of rain for Saturday and Sunday. Monday, 5 millimeters of rain, and then a 40% chance for Tuesday as well. I'm really hoping for a dry start to 2023, Michelle.
That weekend forecast looks pretty good. Let's hope it holds.
Yes.
All right, thanks, Kuljeet.
You're welcome.
And that is our show for this Tuesday. You can always find our news program online at cbc.ca/BC. Anita will be back tomorrow night, and we'll leave you with this footage captured by cameras from the Hakai Institute along a logging road outside of Courtenay, BC. Good night.